On the line we have Colin. How you going, Colin?
Hi, Braden. Good, good.
Nice one. Do you want to maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
So I'm Colin Kennedy, and my business is Iron Road. What we do is public relations and communications, as well as content creation with a strong editorial focus. It's almost brand journalism, where we use communications as or public relations as one of our main channels.
Amazing. And from the sounds of things, you've had quite a bit of experience working with various brands who have launched or expanded into new markets and new countries. Is that correct?
Yeah. I've had some experience, not as much as I'd like. I like to travel, but yeah, I've had a bit of experience doing that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about that experience, and I've got a few questions for you. And the first one is just really rewinding and thinking about when you first worked with your various clients and brands that you've helped launch and expand into new and different markets. You know, what had you sort of wished you had known before you'd sort of started any of those activities?
I think the first one is that you don't want to assume too many similarities. I think most people will accept that there are differences, maybe fewer differences between Australia and New Zealand, maybe some bigger differences between, for example, the United States and New Zealand. But we sort of think, well, Western countries, English speaking, there's going to be a lot more similarities than differences. But in fact, there's quite a lot of differences that we would take for granted and think everybody else does it our way. Sort of smokers or tea times can differ from state to state if they even have them, or have the concept of them. That's in the US. I think the mistake you don't want to make is for them to think you don't understand. So you need to make an effort to understand, because if they believe you don't understand how things work there, well, then they'll spend time explaining it to you, and that can take quite a bit of time, and then you lose the momentum of the point you were trying to make. It kind of becomes this teacher-pupil relationship, which you don't really want. Also, the way they do things there may be different are different to the way we do things here. For example, when I was working with NZ Agritech Inc. in the US in Georgia, they were running some trial dairy farms in Georgia, whereas really most of the US is barn-fed, dairy or barn-fed cows. And so all the farmers in the local area turned up because they had two giant center pivot irrigators, those things that looked like cranes, and spray sort of moisture onto the paddock. And there were fences up as well, so they couldn't figure out how we were going to get the pivots over the fences, and then were amazed to see us just drop the fences, and the pivots then just could go over into the next paddock. So it's a small thing, and it was kind of a funny thing, because all the local farmers turned out to see how it was going to be done. But it kind of, it underscores things that we might take for granted, or think are, normal everywhere or logical, and they aren't. They just don't see things that way. So make sure you understand, because you don't want them to be explaining the way they do things to you. You're going to lose momentum.
Nice one. Well, that's really key insight there. And I guess a second question that I've got for you then, off the back of that, is, I suppose you would have hoped that there were local resources and things that you can learn from before helping brands launch into new markets. But what are the things that you've actually just had to learn along the way that resources won't be able to teach you?
Well, one of them is, you may know there's a difference, but then you have to learn it. So, for example, with Australia, They have some similar labour laws to what we do, but there are differences. So understanding that they're different is not as much as, or sort of knowing that things they do there are different is not as good as understanding what is different. So, for example, if you're looking at labour legislation, here in New Zealand, companies have a different relationship with unions than they do in Australia. There's a whole different attitude between employers and unions than you might find in New Zealand, where, you know, it sort of might be a little bit more divided in Australia, for example, than maybe here, you know, the relationship here. So understanding those nuances that exist in both culture and law is important. Also, if you look at the United States, what we might call health and safety, here they call occupational hygiene. So even though we all talk the same language, we mean different things, or we call different things by different names. And when you get the names wrong, people think you don't understand. And again, you're going to lose momentum if you do that.
Yeah, I guess it would sort of be a big red flag and create friction with the relationship.
Yeah, or it just means you lose momentum because they're sort of thinking, well, how can they sell me something if they don't understand my problems or how things work here, or even at a fundamental level? And it comes down to even simple trip-ups like the English language. You know, health and safety versus occupational hygiene means the same thing, that they're all English words that we understand, but they just mean different things to us.
And how finite do you think that goes down? You know, do people notice when there's things like you know, the difference between S and Z with the UK and American spelling?
No, not so much. That is quite interesting, because more and more New Zealanders and Australians are using the Z or the Americanisms in their spelling. So it'll be interesting to see how far that goes. I think the UK is still pretty strong on using, you know, S instead of Z for words like realised. Whereas here, it's S is the correct version for New Zealand, as well as for Australia. But you do see a lot of people using the Z, and that doesn't sort of seem to make too much difference to the understanding.
And what about in the US context? Are they expecting to see the Z as a sort of an American brand, or are they sort of evolving as well, do you think?
It's better to use the Z, because there's some of them that might not know about, you know, the UK English with the S, and then they'll think you can't spell, and that's not a good look. To begin with, there's also simple things like, you know, we'd call it boot here, they call it the trunk. And even though you watch, you know, lots of TV shows and American movies and they call it the trunk and we know what they mean, we still say boot without thinking that it's actually a trunk there. And a boot's something you put a foot in.
Yeah, I suppose without knowing it, you might put your foot in your mouth. So it is,
yeah. Or in the boot. Yeah.
So it is important to know those nuances and speak their you know, their own language to them to make sure that momentum is really building forward. And I think that's a really nice message. Hey, look,
it's English, but not as you know it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'd sort of say, you know, don't assume anything. Take time to understand and make sure that when you do talk, that people believe you understand.
So I guess it's about them having that belief is what's going to carry you through and to do good business with them.
Yeah, you know, sort of over my time and doing business across mostly the US and some Australia, is the details begin to blur. You don't remember the stories or the learnings, but the three things you do take away is, you know, don't assume you know, take the time to listen, or listen more, speak less, and make sure that you can avoid creating the perception that you don't understand how things work there.
Yeah, that's words of the wise there. And look, if you had to summarize like your one biggest piece of advice for businesses or brands that are looking to launch internationally, what would be your one big gem to give away today?
It's kind of an old one and an obvious one, and everybody will think, well, there's nothing insightful about that because it's part of who we are. But I think it is important, and that's to listen more than you speak. You don't make mistakes if you're speaking less, or you reduce your chances of making mistakes or creating misunderstandings. And you learn a lot more when you listen. So listen more than you speak.
Yeah, that's a big insight, and I think we have a lot to learn and to listen to, especially in other markets where we don't probably know as much as we would like to. So that's probably something that we can definitely put into play in our businesses.
Yeah. There's like quaint little things as well, and just the way people see things. If you get a trade show at the morning at 9 o'clock, they play the Stars and Stripes, and everybody stands where they are. So they start the day with the anthem. At least in the trade shows that I went to. So there's those little things, but they can make quite a difference.
Fantastic. Hey, look, Colin, really appreciate your time and the insights that you've been able to share with myself today. So thank you very much for your sharing your experience and what you've been able to learn.
You're welcome. Thanks, Brandon.